Hey folks, welcome to ByteBay. Today we are going to configure and use Nginx as a load balancer. How? This is what we are going to do. We are going to write a very short script to make get calls to a URL. Then we will configure an Nginx server as a load balancer which will be listening on port 8080 and will be forwarding our API requests to a couple of Spring Boot web servers. One will be listening on port 5050 and the other one will be listening on port 6060. And finally, we will run all of these as Docker containers. At the end of it, we'll see how the setup of Nginx as a load balancer distributes our load across the web servers. So let's get started. But before we begin, I'm doing this for Spring Boot applications and you need Java, Maven and Docker installed for this. If you don't want Java and Maven, you can still spin up Node.js servers as backend web servers and the principles will still apply. Here I'm assuming you have all the three technologies installed. Step 1. Create a Spring Boot application. The easiest way to create a Spring Boot application is to head over to the Spring Initializer portal, which is at start.spring.io, and fill up the details for the app. Select Maven for project, Java for language, and a compatible Spring Boot version. Then enter the group as com.app, artifact as Spring Boot Web App 1. That's what we'll be calling our app. And let's give it a name Web App 1, put a description, give a package name com.webapp1 where all our classes will go, and we'll select a packaging type as jar. And finally, as we need to deploy them as web servers serving API requests, select Spring Web as the dependency. Finally, after entering all the details, click on generate. This will download the web application in your machine. I have already downloaded that and opened it in Visual Studio Code. I will open the pom.xml file and we can see that this has the exact details that we entered in the Spring Initializer portal for generating the app. We will head over to the Web App 1 application class and create a method to handle the API requests, which will simply say hello from Web App 1. We will add the annotation @request mapping to redirect all the requests to this particular method, and we will define this class as a REST controller and we will import the dependencies. Now our goal is to run this app on port 5050, so we will set a server.port property value at 5050 in the application.properties file, and finally it is time to run the application on port 5050. For that, we will open the terminal and execute mvn clean install command. This will generate the archive that we will be running as the backend. This will compile the code and build the artifact under the target folder, as you can see that it already did. Next, we will execute the Maven command to package and run the app, that is mvn package and java-jar target / and then provide the jar file name. This will start the application on port 5050, and now if I hit localhost at port 5050, I will get a message from the method that we created in the app. But eventually we don't want to run the app like this, we want to run it as Docker container. So for that, we will add a Docker file in the root directory of the project that can create a Docker image for the project and containerize the application. For that, we will create a file and name it Docker file. Then we will add the following commands: a command to choose the base image for the container, then a command to state the location of the executable, a command to copy that executable into the image, and finally a command to specify how to start the app. At the end of this, when the Docker file is created, we will execute docker build -t and we will give the image a name lbapp/webapp1 to build the Docker image, where lbapp-webapp1 is our chosen image name. Now that we have created the first backend server, we need to create the second backend server running on port 6060. For that, we will just modify three things: the app name in the pom.xml, the port where the server must run, and the message in this REST method. Everything else will stay the same. Then we will repeat all these steps that we applied for creating Web App 1. Now let's run both the Docker containers and check if they are working. To run the first app, we open a terminal window on our machine and execute docker run -p 5050:5050 and provide the image name for the app 1. And to run the second app, we will open another terminal window and execute docker run -p 6060:6060 and provide the image name for app 2. Now let's open our browser and hit the localhost at port 5050 to get hello from Web App 1 and hit the app at port 6060 to get the message hello from Web App 2. Okay, what is next? Step 2. Configure and run the load balancer. Create a directory for the Nginx configuration file. Let's say it's lbconfig. We will open the terminal window and create a directory for lbconfig. In that, we will create an Nginx conf file and we will add the following configuration to it. We will provide a HTTP configuration and we will specify the upstream servers, which will be our backend servers. Let's call them backend servers, and we'll say server localhost at port 5050 and another server at localhost port 6060, which will be serving our requests. Now we will provide a server configuration. Our Nginx app will listen at port 8080. We will call it localhost, and we will specify a configuration saying any request that comes with slash that should go to our backend server. And finally, this needs an empty events configuration, so we will just provide it. Okay, but hold on for a second. Here, localhost will not work. To connect to a process in localhost from within a Docker container, we will need to connect to a special DNS name host.docker.internal, which resolves to the internal IP address used by the host. So for that, we will have to replace the local host in the backend servers with host.docker.internal. This is for development purpose and will not work in a production environment outside of Docker desktop. And by the way, I think this should be obvious, but Nginx by default distributes the load in a round-robin manner among the backend servers. Now finally, to dockerize the Nginx image with this config, we will create a Docker file in the same location and we will add these configurations. From Nginx, to choose the base image, copy Nginx conf to this location to copy the Nginx configuration we just created into the image. Now let's create the Nginx Docker image with this config. Let's open a terminal and execute docker build-t Nginx lb, where Nginx lb is the name we are giving to our Nginx load balancer image. Finally, we will run the Nginx server Docker container by typing docker run -p 8080:8080 Nginx lb, so that we can access this Nginx server at port 8080. Now if we just open the browser and hit localhost at port 8080, we can see that the first call goes to the server at port 5050 and the next to the server at port 6060. The last step, the script. At the end, we will write a small script to make the API calls to our load balancer. We will open a terminal and we will type a short bash script which will run a loop 100 times and will make API calls to port 8080. Now let's just hit enter and execute this, and we can see the calls being fired. If we observe, we can see that the calls are alternately served by servers at port 5050 and 6060. So this is how, folks, we can configure an Nginx server as an application load balancer. That's it, folks. Hope you all liked this video. If you really did, then please like and subscribe to the channel. That would motivate me to make more videos like this. Till then, see you all.